back to painting and decorating. This video is about papering the back of a fireplace. Now, it's just a feature fireplace, this. There is just going to be an electric fire put in place once the paper's done. There's a bit of preparation needed to be done on this before I can actually paper it. The customer's got this paper. I'll show you in a minute. This is statement feature wallpapers. Jantis is the design, so grey, silver. So that should be quite nice. It's like a marble effect with a geometric pattern over it. So let's just have a quick look inside this fireplace and see what needs doing before we can put paper on there. Let's just move that wine rack out of the way. Right. Now, generally, it's not too bad. There is no filling to do, but there is still a bit of preparation to do. Now, the ceiling bit there, that's going white, but you can't just wallpaper over emulsion, because if you ever want to change the paper and you strip it off, there's a good chance it'll peel the emulsion off down to burr plaster and bits left on, and you can end up with a right mess. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sand this down, and then I'm going to seal it using Zinsser 123. There is other products you can use to seal that. I'm also going to clean off around the edge some of this old plaster. You can see it's on the brick. So once I've done that, it's ready for papering then. Just seal the edge there, the plaster needing cleaning up. So I'll get on and get the preparation done, and then I'll show you what we need for papering it, the gear you need. Just thought I'd show you what I'm actually going to use on the ceiling part, which is the Dulux Easy Care. It's for kitchens, but you can use it anywhere really. It's just good for cleaning off. It's waterproof, so it's, you know, if you're ever cleaning off and wiping around with a cloth, you're never going to actually leave marks. And this is what I'm going to use to actually seal the wall before I put my paper on. Preparation has been done now. I'll give you a quick look around that. And so I've cleaned off around the brick. You can tell the difference. And I've done the ceiling part there white. That's had 2 coats, and that's had a coat of the Zinsser Bullseye 123. It's drying out that. Big difference when you clean off around the edges. It looks a lot neater. And when I've actually put the Zinsser on, I've kind of kept it straight. I've not dipped in too much where the brick is, because I'm going to try and keep the paper neat, apart from the little bits where it does kind of, the brick drops back a little bit. So I can have neat edges. You can see there where the brick drops back a bit, so the paper will just drop back slightly. But I'm not going to be going into where the joint lines are, because it'll look awful. Try and keep it as straight as I can. Right, let's have a look at some of the gear. Right, so I've got a bucket and a clean cloth for wiping any paste off anything. Now, you've got 2 choices, and it does depend on what paper you're using. Most ordinary papers, lightweight, you can use an all-purpose Solvite. There is other brands, but if you get some heavyweight vinyls, then you're better off using something like this, which is ready mixed, and it's really strong. It's got added PVA in that one. It's good stuff, that is. Paste brush. Now you can use a roller if you want. I've got my bucket to mix my paste in. Stirring stick. Moving on to plumbing your paper. Now you can use spirit level. Got different types there. You can even use a laser, which that's my laser that I use. I mean, they're okay, but don't use that a lot really. My preferred method is a plumb bob, and that's a more modern one. And that one used to be my dad's. That's older than me, that. Couple of pencils. You're better off using a hard lead than a soft lead. Sometimes a soft lead can bleed into the edges of the paper and make a bit of a mess. Cutting your paper. Now again, you've got different choices. Depends what you're doing. Most of the time I like to use scissors because they leave a neat finish. Blades, different types. There's a roller blade there. That's not too bad, that one, sometimes, across the top of skirtings and things like that. Then you can use snap blades as well. Seam rollers, two different types there. There's a hard one and a sponge one. Sometimes you need them, and sometimes you don't. I think that needs a bit of glue. Shows you how often I use that. Anyway, moving on to measuring your paper. Now, metal and water doesn't really go. So although these are okay, they tend to rust over time. So my preferred method is using something like this for papering. They do wooden 2-foots as well, which are good, because this is plastic and it just wipes off really easy. You can also use a straight edge if you want. I've got my straight edge there. Right, so let's have a look at the wallpaper. In fact, just before we look at the wallpaper, I forgot the most important thing: your paper hanging brush. A nice soft bristle on that. The odd paper you may be able to use a spatula, but the majority of papers you can't, because it will actually scratch the surface and leave a mess. So that's why I always prefer to use a paper hanging brush. Always be really careful with your paper, especially on the edges. Store it very carefully. I'm going to open this. Be careful when you open it sometimes, because the way it's tucked in, you can sometimes rip the edges. That's not too bad. It's not got any sellotape on that part. Now, most important part is always check your instructions and what's going on. So let's have a quick look here. If you can see there. So if you're using a lot of paper, you've got to check all the batch numbers. Make sure they're the same. So that's a batch. The batch reference is X, and check all the pattern numbers as well. So they've all got to be the same. On this one, pattern match is a repeat. 53 centimeters repeat. So actually, there's going to be quite a lot of waste on this paper. Always make sure of that. The next of them 2 lines there, that's washable. you do get 3 which is scrubbable. So this one's washable, so it's not too bad. This next one here shows you it's easy peel. So when you come to remove the paper, it just comes off very easy. And this one says paste the wall covering. Some you paste the wall first, but technically it doesn't matter. If it does say that, you can still paste the paper, but put it straight up. When it says paste the wall covering, usually you have to allow it to soak, and the soaking time is on the back. So it just shows you, demonstrates bits there, and then the soaking time for this paper is 5 to 8 minutes. Now split it in the middle, 6.5 minutes. Right. Again, these papers, when you open them, always open it face up, so you can actually double check the pattern and make sure it looks okay and there's no marks of ink on it anywhere. This looks okay. If you've got several rolls of paper, although you may have checked all the batch numbers and the pattern numbers are all the same, you've got to colour shade them, is what we say. So put all your rolls together and just make sure they all look very, similar in colour. This is looking fine, there's no problems with that at all. What I usually do is I cut off the first foot of my paper, and that usually is because that's the bit that's been wrapped up at the beginning, and that's usually slightly damaged, because some papers they shrink wrap them and they melt the edges. So this hasn't been shrink wrapped, so it's actually not too bad at all, but I'm still going to cut it off. I also, the first cut, I'll make sure I'm cutting where I feel as though it's going to be the top of my paper. This isn't too bad. Generally you can start anywhere with this. So I'm just going to cut that much off there. It takes you a while to practice that one. So the next job is to measure your height of your wall, so then you can measure the height of your paper that you need. So my wall is 4 foot. Now I've made sure I've given myself enough overlap top and bottom, because the ceiling's like that and the bottom's a bit like that. So if you measure one area, it might be slightly different down the wall, so always double check your height in different places down the wall. Now, like I say, 4 foot, 12 inches is a foot. So starting at the top of your paper, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now sometimes what I'll do is I'll actually put marks on the bench. You can't quite see me down here, but I'm just going to cut the paper there. Now, sometimes if you've got several rolls, you can actually work 2 rolls together to limit the amount of waste of paper. I've only got 1 roll because it's just this fireplace. Now, it says it's a repeat pattern. Now that's not too bad where that's, you lie one on top of the other and you find out where the pattern sits. Just like that, you've got a bit of overlap there because the pattern, that's your waste. Now that's not too bad that. So, come across. There you go, that's the pattern match. So, and then what I'll do is I'll fold that over and then cut the waste off. Just that. And the bottom. You've also got to work out how many lengths of paper across your wall you need. Now generally you can use your roll and mark from one end to the other as you're going across the wall, and then you'll know how many lengths you need. I actually need 3 lengths for this wall. Just one more. Always make sure your paper's straight with the edge of your bench, and then you're making straight cuts. What I also do is mark the top of my paper so I know where it is. Sometimes I might put a line straight across, depends if I'm going to be cutting strips off, because you always know where the top is because you put the pencil mark straight across. Now let's have a look where to plumb your line. Each wall is different to where you're actually going to start your paper. This pattern doesn't matter where if I start in the centre or offset, and I'll show you what I mean. So on this, if I was to work out the centre and plumb a line and start my first piece there, you can see that I'm fiddling about with a small piece here, and then from there I've actually got an even smaller piece that I'm fiddling about with down that side. So I'm going to work out the centre and then split the half and put my first length like that. Then my second length obviously can go straight there, and then my third length over there. So actually it's only 3 lengths for this. It would have been 4 if I'd done it from the centre, but there you go, that's the difference of just starting there. Depending on the pattern, you may actually have to start in the centre to make the pattern look even. But like I say, I'm going to offset this. So I'll show you how to plumb that line now. Yeah, because I generally know where things are going, I can put a mark just there, and I'm going to plumb the line off that. Now, I prefer to use my spirit level, plumb line, because I can't fit a spirit level in my pocket. So, plumb line. At your top, you like your string on the top of that mark, and then just let the bottom settle. And usually I close one eye as I'm looking at the string, so as the pencil mark disappears, I make sure I can't see the pencil mark when I'm making it down the line. There we go. It's just enough that. So I'm ready to paste my first piece. Now, because I'm only doing a small section, I'm going to paste 2 lengths. First one straight on, and then I can do the second one, and then I'll paste my third and get that one done. Once you've got your lengths cut, then what you want to do is roll them back on themselves And what this does, it takes the memory out of the paper of actually being rolled up. Because if I just turn that over, what you get usually is it will just roll back on itself very easily. This isn't too bad actually. Some papers, they're so springy, it just straight back on you. But I'll just show you for demonstration purposes with this one. So it's not too bad. So you want to try and not crease it too much, and then just roll it back on itself. I'll just give it a bit of a push down. That's not too bad. Putting all your lengths in the centre of your bench. Take your first length and offer it up to the edge of the bench, like so. Now when it comes to pasting, what you want to do is keep your hand on the paper like that, so it doesn't start spinning off everywhere as you're pasting. Now don't go straight to the edge, start just a bit down and then work out to the edges like that. And have a couple of passes over areas, because the first pass the paste soaks in a little bit, and the second pass you're building it up on the paper. What you don't want to do is pull your brush back across that edge, because you get paste under that edge. When you've done that top edge, bring it paper down to the bottom edge. Make sure you get plenty of paste on. Now usually your top fold is shorter than your bottom fold, again so you know where the top is. Just fold that onto there. Now I'll just leave that to soak. So we said 6.5 minutes for that. So I'm literally going to wait 2 minutes before I paste my next piece, because it'll take about 2 minutes to put that up. Now I'm going to set a timer for this. Right, timer's gone. You're always better timing your paper so you know exactly how long it's been done for. Now make sure you've got the top of your paper. Now because I've marked it anyway, you know exactly where the top is. Now just open one fold, like so. Now the sealing line really does dip up there, so when you put this first piece on, you've got to make sure you've got enough overlap at the top, so when you match up the pattern, you're not short on the top on the next one. So taking your paper, don't just stick it to the wall, fold it slightly on itself like that. Finding your plumb line and just put that side on. Again, making sure you've got enough overlap at the top. Now you can adjust your paper to your plumb line now on that side, and once you're satisfied with where it is, making sure you've no paste on the front of your paper, taking your paper hanging brush side to side, not up and down, because if you get a bubble in it, it's more difficult to get out, and you also stretch the pattern very easily. So side to side and push the bubbles out, tuck it in at the top. Again, you don't have to pushing the paste out, you just want to push the air out from the back of the paper. Just release that one on there. Now I'll show you cutting this top piece. Now what I do is I use my scissors at the top edge. Depending on what you're doing, if you've got no edge line to go to, you have to use a spirit level and your straight edge. You sometimes can use a pencil and mark the front if you can't see a line on the back of the paper. But you've got to be really careful that you mark the top, not the face of the paper on this front. So you actually cut off the pencil line. So finding the corner, not tearing the paper, you've got to be careful. Just pull along, peel your paper back and you can see a line down the paper, and then you can cut that. Now, always fold up your waste, so then you don't slip on it or you get paste on everything. Wipe off the paste on the ceiling. Not too bad at all, that. So now I've just got this bottom to trim, and then I'll show you how to cut the piece for that side, because it's shorter in width on that side now. Taking a measurement at the deepest part, which is there, that's 16, but what I'm going to do is cut it to 17 so I have a decent bit to handle and cut off. I'll show you how to cut it on the bench. When it comes to cutting your paper down, you've got to be really careful of which edge you're actually cutting, because there's a left and a right to where you're working. Now, because we've marked it, we know where the top of the paper is, but that's the edge I'm actually going to match up underneath. So what I want to be doing is measuring from that side here and then cutting. So turning your paper round and bringing it to this edge of the bench, we're now going to cut the correct edge off. We've already measured it, it's 17. So holding the 17 on the edge of the paper and your finger on the edge of the bench, using a pencil, you can just run that down. When it comes to cutting, always keep your scissors on the bottom of the bench like that, because if you try and do that, it's harder. Doesn't have to be perfect, but don't go over the line to the wrong side. support now. So just release the first piece. Again, not putting it all up, folding your paper slightly half. Find where your pattern sits. Just slightly adjust it. Now, when you move it into position, you want to be butting the paper up, not overlapping it at all. Now, work the pattern usually from the centre, then back to the top. Not too bad. Make sure, using your fingers, you can tell if it's overlapped. That's okay. Then, paper hanging brush. Just gently push it into position. You've got to be very careful with paper. One wrong move and you've turred it. Or you tear it, I should say. Good. Make sure there's no bubbles. Now sometimes what you find is the joint actually looks dark, and that's because it's wet. When it dries out, you won't see it. Right. So I'll just release this bottom piece and then make sure the pattern's right. Where the camera is you can't quite see down here, but I'll just get it in position. Ensure there's no paste on your paper. Yeah, and that top edge I'm going to cut first. So a bit of a relief cut there. Now relief cuts are so you can actually push the paper into an area. That's where I was on about the paper actually bows in slightly. It's not too bad. I should say the brick bows in slightly. I'm forever getting the words mixed up. You've probably noticed by now if you've been watching this channel for a bit. Now, going down this edge, I'm actually going to mark with my pencil. Now, I'm going to try and mark that way instead of that way and cut off the pencil line. You've got to be very careful. Now, on the top, I'm going to use my scissors. Now it's really important to make sure that you get the tops looking the same where you do the cuts, because that's the bit where you can tell where the paper joins if you don't get it right. Especially if you can't see the joint, you always look at the top and you can see where the paper's plaster's all shapes, but you know, you can't help that. So again, cutting the pencil line off. quite tough, the front of this paper, to be honest. I use my cloth to push that into position there. Now, sometimes you might have to readjust a little bit of an area, but that's not too bad at all. You can always cut a little extra off, but you can never replace it. So always make sure you don't cut too much off in the first cut. Make sure there's no bubbles. And the last final thing is check your joints and your pattern. That's good. So I'm going to carry on and finish this now, and you'll be able to see the finish. All finished. Not too bad. Not too bad. Definitely better than it just being plain. So that's it for this video. I'll just give you a quick look at some of them edges. You can see what I mean where it dipped in on that side. Same on the other side. Bit of deviation in the brick. So let's say electric fire there, or a Buddha, a lava lamp, something like that, and a full wine rack.